Good morning, everybody. It is Wednesday, January 3rd, 2024. Can't believe we're saying 2024, but here we are in the new year, past the holiday season, and everybody getting their resolutions together and what are they going to do differently this next year. My personal resolution is to start a personal exercise routine. I spend so much time at my computer and on the phone that I just have really let that sort of drop off. And so that is going to be my personal resolution this year, is to get back into a daily exercise routine. So through my whole journey as an angel mom and, going here and testifying and back in DC and dealing with legislators, I ended up having a military wife reach out to me, and she's Hispanic, and she was fed up with what was happening, prior to President Trump being in office. She was all about Trump, was so thrilled about what he was doing at the border. And then Biden came into office, and she was furious and so upset. But she does a ton of research and sends me articles like last night, because I hadn't heard from her since 2021. And last night, it just popped up that she was sending me a message, and I said, "Oh my gosh, where have you been? I haven't heard from you since 2021. And evidently she had a death in her family, and then her husband was restationed. So she's been pretty busy. And of course, COVID hit, but within a matter of hours, she had sent me like 52 articles. And she does a lot of deep digging into the areas that most mainstream media doesn't cover. These stories, doesn't talk about them. They're obscure stories. A lot of the stuff she was sending me back when Biden first took over the White House, she was sending me a lot of articles that were in Spanish. And so I was having to translate them, from the cartel, stuff that was going on down in Mexico, and the caravans and the people who are cooperating with a lot of these illegals that were traipsing through Mexico. So, but she sent me, like I said, about 52 articles last night, and there became a theme to these articles that she was sending me. And it's Venezuelan crime, illegal crime here in America. And so today I'm going to spend the time, and I know it might be boring to some of you, but today I'm going to spend the time going over these different crimes so that you understand the magnitude of the crimes and the heinous crimes that these people commit. This is what happens when you mix cultures, when you mix misunderstandings, lack of communication because of speech differences, language differences, cultural differences, and the sense of entitlement that these illegals come across our border with because of what they've heard, because of what somebody has relayed to them. It's like that, telegram game that we used to play when we were little, where somebody would whisper into somebody's ear and it would go down the line. And by the time it got to the other side of the line, it wasn't anything from what had started at the beginning. And I'm afraid that's what's happening with these illegals. They send the wrong message, and these people think they're getting everything. In fact, I was watching an interview where they were talking to a guy from Venezuela, and they were saying, "What are you coming here for?" And he said, "A job, a house, a car." And Biden promised them. And they were questioning him a little bit more, and he says, "No, this is what Biden will give us. We were told this is what Biden will give us." Well, when you come from a socialist country to where you are given everything, and it's decided by the government what you will and will not have, that is their mindset. And so when they're talking about there's jobs, you can get a house, you can get a car, with work and hard work and having a job, that is the American dream. But when they hear those words, it sends a message to them that this is just going to be handed to them. And so I think that's why a lot of these illegals are coming from Venezuela, because they think that this is a free-for-all and they are not going to have to work and they're just going to be handed over a house, a car, a beautiful life. Come on, come to America. You deserve this beautiful life. So these crimes that I'm going to be going over, I can't even believe some of them that I were reading, and the magnitude of crimes happening around the Roosevelt Hotel in New York City. I mean, it is crazy, and I'm going to get through all of these, but Denver. So just recently, a bunch of business owners in Denver, in an area where they have set up like 70 plus tents for the illegal population because they have overstayed the limit at these illegal shelters. And of course, nothing's moving in any of these cities and states where they're going, where they're these huge influx, even in New York, where they have them staying at the Roosevelt Hotel, many, many hotels, and taking over churches and schools and gymnasiums and community centers. Those people do not have jobs. They're not going anywhere. They don't have a house to live in. There's no apartments for them to be put into because they don't have a job and they can't pay rent. So these people are there for a very long time. And so they overstayed the limit there in Denver in the illegal places that they had. And so they started setting up this tent city. And it's primarily Venezuelan illegals that are in these. And they were talking to a business owner, a legal, I think it's a Vietnamese immigrant, but she bought a gas station and opened a small shop there. And she's really afraid and upset and disturbed by what's happening because it's a 2-block area where there's all of these tents and the trash is overflowing. And the business owners are really getting upset because these illegals are begging for money, begging for work. Their children just play out in the parking lots. The business owners are afraid that cars coming to their businesses are going to hit these children. There's going to be liability issues. The list goes on and on and on. And again, they come to a country and don't understand. You need to keep your children out of a parking lot. You need to keep your children at your side. You need to keep your children safe. And with the more and more illegals that are coming into our country and don't understand our culture, there's a lot of sexual crimes going on by these illegals against children. And it's growing rapidly. But in Denver, in the last year, there was like 35,588 illegals have arrived in Denver. And that's roughly the same size as Inglewood, California, or Inglewood, Colorado population. So a whole, small city there in Denver, the population has been brought from the border and just plopped into Denver. What do you do with these people? Another article that was just out recently, and I'm sure some of you have probably seen it, the New Jersey, Edison, New Jersey mayor, Sam Joshi, said that he sent buses back to the border that had shown up there in New Jersey. The New Jersey mayor said that we don't know who they are, if they're armed, and it's a health and security risk. Shouldn't that be the mindset at the border when they're actually coming over? Isn't that the mindset that the government should be using? No, we just let them all come in. Whether they have terrorist ties, we don't know. We don't know what their previous crime record was in the country that they're coming from. We don't know if they're coming to join a terrorist cell that's probably already setting themselves up here in the United States. We don't know if they're, drug traffickers who are going to set up shop in New Jersey, Edison, New Jersey. We don't know any of this stuff because this administration doesn't care about who they are letting into our country. And that's the sad reality. I'm going to start going through some of these articles because I'm telling you, I cannot even believe how many articles, and I do some research, but this military wife is really good at this. There was a man arrested with a machete at the Capitol building, and this was January 2nd. Man arrested with machete at Capitol is illegal immigrant freed by Biden. So the man arrested last week was carrying a machete at the U.S. Capitol is an illegal immigrant from Venezuela who was caught and released in 2022 under the Biden administration's lenient border policies. The U.S. Immigration and ICE enforcement said Tuesday it has in custody Jose Leonardo Marquez, 23 years old. So he was found by police with a machete, a knife, and a brick at the Capitol. And ICE officers apprehended him on immigration charges the very next day. They described him as a homeless man. He was on Capitol grounds. His behavior drew officers' attention. And he was first encountered by Border Patrol on August 21st, 22, near El Paso, Texas. The agents processed him and released him the next day, citing a lack of detention space to hold him. A lack of detention space to hold him. And Border Patrol released him onto the streets. It's unclear what he did for the next year. ICE is checking with the deportation officers in the District of Columbus area. He checked in with the deportation officers in D.C. area on October 5th, and that's when he was finally issued an official immigration court summons. So, again, releasing these criminals back onto our streets for lack of space in these centers that they've put together. And this is going to be happening more and more, folks, because they're full. U.S. border agent investigation caught returning migrants to Mexico. U.S. Border Patrol agent under investigation after he was caught returning migrants to Mexico after they had already crossed into the U.S. near the El Paso, Texas. The U.S. law and Border Patrol policy requires agents to arrest any immigrant who has crossed into the U.S. illegally, as his family had. Illegal immigrants cannot be returned to Mexico without first being screened by Border Patrol agents because they have broken the law by entering the U.S. without authorization. If a migrant in Border Patrol custody makes an asylum claim, they must be given the opportunity to have a credible, fair interview. But this Border Patrol agent was caught returning a family of asylum seekers who were already in the U.S. back to Mexico. And you know what? That's what should be being done, because there are no reports in any country in South America or in Mexico. I mean, in Mexico, yeah, you've got the cartel, but there's no credible threats. There's no civil wars. There's nothing going on. In fact, you've got down in El Salvador, I believe it's El Salvador, not Guatemala, it's El Salvador, I believe, where they have a big sports complex that they've recently built. And the government there has said, the crime rate's way down. Things are looking really good for the residents in that country. So why are these people still coming? Why are they coming from Senegal and Africa? Why are they coming from Romania? Why are they coming from, all these different countries? Why are they coming? What is going on? It's not true asylum claims. That isn't what's going on here at all. So this family, so this family that this Border Patrol was returning was a family of 6 from Venezuela, including girls age 1 and 4, and they had crossed over. And so he sent them back. He said, go back. So he drove up and ordered them back to Mexico, repeatedly pointing that they go back. Then, of course, the Las Americas immigrant advocacy group says, they're not supposed to be turning people away, especially if they're already in the U.S. territory. This is not supposed to be happening. Of course, there'll probably be a lawsuit against this guy because that's what these NGOs do. This is a huge moneymaker for these people, and they are not gonna walk away quietly from something that is making them millions of dollars. And I'm sure some of them are on the fly with the cartel, probably because they're aiding and abetting and helping them. I'm sure they're probably getting kickbacks from the cartels too. Let me see. Biden administration brings dispute over the Texas border wall. We already have talked about that one. Biden administration watered down vetting process for Chinese illegal immigrants. And this was just January 2nd. The Biden administration drastically simplified the vetting process for Chinese illegal immigrants in April of 2023, according to an internal U.S. Customs and Border Patrol email. So it was sent by a CBP supervisor to a master list of about 500 Border Patrol agents. And it instructs CBP officials to radically reduce the number of interview questions for Chinese immigrants apprehended after illegally crossing into the country from roughly 40 to just 5 questions. The headquarter guidance became as Border Patrol agents are overwhelmed with near record numbers of illegal crossings. So again, logically speaking, if the Border Patrol is having a problem processing this many people, then we should be stopping it from happening. We shouldn't be saying, okay, we're not going to ask you 40 questions. We're going to ask you 5 questions. Hurry up, answer these, go. And know nothing about this person. This is the whole problem of this process with the Biden administration. I mean, at least Trump had to remain in Mexico and was keeping those people down in Mexico and not allowing them to come in here. And of course, we didn't have people from this many countries arriving at the border under the Trump administration because those people knew they would just be turned away and held in Mexico for unknown lengths of time. This policy change has accelerated the time it takes to process Chinese illegal immigrants. This doesn't make America safer. And this was a national security threat. J.J. Carroll, a retired CBP deputy patrol agent in charge, was telling this journalist, this is just a government covering their ass so they can say they vetted. I believe the government recognizes the threat of Chinese soldiers and spies that are pouring into America, and they want to try and identify these individuals. However, the same government does not want to stop the flow of illegal aliens or Chinese nationals, just the bad ones, which is impossible. So while previously agents might have spent hours vetting a single Chinese illegal, they're just spending minutes because, again, they're not asking them 40 questions. They're only having to ask them 5 now. And it was almost immediate where the Chinese illegal immigrants knew what to say and what not to say. So the former law enforcement official who provided the email said human smuggling operations quickly adapted to these new guidelines, coaching Chinese illegal immigrants how to answer the short list of questions. It's highly coordinated, and they are coached from the beginning of the journeys. The stories are identical. The streets and the names they use just differ because of the nations they're from. And any Chinese illegal who pass field agents 5 basic questions may be released into the U.S. interior. If they do not alert to the above, and there is no requirement to further delay current processing, a pathway. So, since 2022, Border Patrol has encountered approximately 35,000 Chinese illegal immigrants at the border. 35,000. And between 2022 and 2023, Border Patrol encounters with Chinese illegal immigrants surged, you ready for this? Over 1,000%. Over 1,000%. After answering these basic questions, the Chinese illegal immigrants are sent out wherever they go, whether that's contracted through Catholic charities or other nonprofits. Again, like I said, it's these NGOs that are profiting big time, that are never going to let this, they're never going to go along with borders being closed, a new administration coming in and rectifying the issues. They're going to fight tooth and nail and file a bunch of lawsuits and try and keep this money flow going for them. It's all about greed, and that's the most sickening part of all of this. Let me see. So 2 New York City men, charged with staging at least 8 bogus armed robberies all over the country for immigration perks. So, 2 New York men staged armed robberies at convenience stores and fast food joints across the United States to scheme immigration benefits. Mr. Patel and Mr. Singh were arrested on December 13th and both charged with 1 count of conspiracy to commit visa fraud for their alleged plot, which allowed the victims of their robberies to apply for special immigration visas. Oh, interesting. So they orchestrated at least 8 of the alleged staged robberies, which involved a robber threatening a store clerk with an apparent firearm before snatching cash from the register in front of the store's surveillance camera. The scheme began in March of 2023, had the store clerks wait 5 or more minutes until a robber made their escape before calling the police to report the crime. The victims of the alleged robberies each paid Patel to participate in the phony antics, while Patel paid the store owners to use their shops for the staged robberies. And the purpose of the staged robberies was to enable the store clerks to apply for special U visa, which allows immigrants who've been mentally or physically abused and help prosecute criminals to stay in the country for 4 years. It's amazing how they figure out all of these loopholes. Just amazing. And as you start reading and hearing about these kind of articles and things that are going on, things start shaping in your mind, and you start realizing how corrupt every aspect of the government is. And to think that the government willy-nilly, this administration anyway, and of course they do it in these spending bills, these astronomical spending bills. They shove all this kind of stuff in there where these NGOs are going to get this disturbing amount of money to support these illegals. And I know I've got an article that I'm going to be coming across where this one NGO got millions of dollars to provide food to these illegals in the New York hotels, and they were just finding trash cans outside. The food wasn't even opened, touched, or anything. They were just throwing away the food because it didn't, it wasn't what they were used to. And once again, mixing cultures like this and expecting these people just to adhere to how life is here. They don't know. They don't care. They didn't come here to make a change and to live in a different country. They came here to bring their culture and their ways, just plop down in another country and start over again. Iranian national with terror ties caught crossing the U.S. northern border illegally. Yeah, that was on December 29th. I think it was up in the New York, the Niagara Falls, the port of entry there. He actually had tried to enter legally in October at the port of entry at Niagara Falls, but was refused entry by CBP and turned back to Canadian border officials. So then he was arrested 2 days later trying to enter illegally between the ports of entry near the Whirlpool Bridge port of entry. He was served with an expedited order of removal in November and was removed to Canada earlier this month based on safe third country agreement between the two countries. Well, then he tried again. And in fiscal year 23, there were 484 encounters of people on the FBI's terror watch list at the ports of entry and 3 between ports of entry. So that, again, luckily they stopped him. Let me see. Chicago Northside migrant shelter residents charged with jumping on cars. So let's check in and see how things are going with some of Chicago's new neighbors at the city's newly opened migrant shelter on North Elston across from the salt shed. Arturo Morons, 39, is one of Venezuelan's transplants calling the shelter home. Cops arrested him for misdemeanor battery after he allegedly threw a rock at a 61-year-old suburban man's SUV, breaking the front windshield. This was at 10:45 a.m. He threw another rock that hit the victim in the forehead when the victim had rolled down his window to yell about the shattered windshield. And he also went on to strike the victim in the back of the head with a half-broken crutch. The victim got out of his SUV and pinned more on until the police arrived. And in another case, they also arrested a 30-year-old on December 14th at that same shelter when they saw him, Carlos Garcia, jumping on top of a vehicle and punching its windows in the traffic lanes of Elston Avenue. The cops said Garcia pushed one of them to the street and then fought with both officers, who had to call for backup. And Garcia was yelling in Spanish, "I'm going to kill you." One of the officers suffered a broken hand, and he's charged with felony aggravated battery of a peace officer, reckless conduct, and resisting police. And Judge Mariam Ahmed released him from custody the very next day. According to court records, a warrant is now out for his arrest because he failed to show up for his first court date on December 21st. Duh. These people aren't going to show up to court dates after they've been released for committing a crime. Angela Materano was arrested at Macy's after the security officer saw her take a bunch of clothing into a dressing room and then walk out of the store with the items concealed in a plastic bag. She was careful to wrap all the shopping bag sensor tags with aluminum foil before she walked out the door with $712 worth of merchandise. She was charged with felony retail theft. She didn't attend her first court date on December 22nd, and the judge decided to notify her of her oversight by sending a postcard rather than issuing an arrest record or an arrest warrant. This is how ridiculous these judges are in these liberal cities, that they just return these criminals back out onto the streets and honestly think that they're going to show up in court to face their charges. They're not going to be showing up in court. Oh, here's an interesting one. A migrant who died at a shelter in June, this was an article December 26th, was killed by cocaine and fentanyl. So the medical examiner, this was a Venezuelan who died at one of Chicago's migrant shelters in June, and he was actually killed by a deadly mix of cocaine and fentanyl. So here he is in a shelter in Chicago, and he's got cocaine and fentanyl in there. He is the first person known to have died in Chicago since large numbers of the migrants began arriving here in August of 22. He was pronounced dead after being found unresponsive at the former Wadsworth Elementary School in Chicago. And it took months for the medical examiner to come back with the results. His sister said her brother came to America not only to realize his dreams of being here in the United States, but also to realize the dreams of others that are still in Venezuela. And he worked very hard doing that. The last time we spoke, he talked about wanting to save money to buy a home. We didn't come here to cause problems or create a scandal. What we really want is to provide for our families to have a future. There you have it. Provide for our families and have a future. That's not an asylum, a legal asylum reason to even be in the United States. Those people should be sent right back. We already know this. Pregnant migrants, they're 8.5, almost 9 months pregnant, standing there at the border waiting to come over, and they freely tell the reporters, we need to make it into America to have our babies so that they've got citizenship. That's another thing Congress needs to handle. They need to change that because it's being abused big time. Then there was the Indian nationals who were all those illegals. They were detained in the French airport over suspected human trafficking. That happened December 23rd. Then Mexico detains 2 Iranian migrants on the FBI watch list. This was on December 13th. Mexican immigration authorities detained a group of 5 Middle Eastern migrants who were trying to reach the U.S. border. 2 of those migrants were reportedly listed on an FBI watch list. They were arrested on the highway that connects Tecate and Tijuana. So they were in a car with Mexican license plates being driven by a Haitian man. And the vehicle contained 5 Middle Eastern men who Mexican authorities claimed had the intention of illegally crossing into the U.S. Yeah, but if they had successfully gotten to the border, they would have gotten in. Period. Gangs from South America used security jammers to break into expensive homes across the country. That was on December 7th. I remember reading about that. They're breaking into multi-million-dollar homes across the country. They're highly functional and well-trained. They do the jammer things and be able to get past the security systems, which, that's their lifestyle. That's what they're used to doing, these little gangs who come here. December 2nd, Colombian burglary crew found following business owner's home arrested after police witnessed residential burglary. Doesn't make sense. A Colombian burglary crew who allegedly followed Asian business owners to their homes have been arrested after police tracked them down and witnessed them burglarizing a Gurney home. This was in, where is this? I don't know. So they were charged with burglary. Let's see if they've been released. The police actually waited, let them break into this house, watched them do it, and then they came out with a pillowcase. Jewelry was found. The victims identified the jewelry as theirs, so they were arrested. And Lake County Judge Theodore Pajonskak ordered all 3 suspects to be held at the Lake County Jail pending trial after prosecutors filed a petition to detain them. So hopefully they'll be kept in jail and face charges and not be released back out into the streets to do more of that. Feds deport a former MLB All-Star after conviction for child sex crimes. This was on December 7th. ICE officials deported a former Major League Baseball star for sexual crimes involving a minor. The former Pittsburgh Pirate player Felipe Javier Riviero Blanco was sent back to Venezuela after he was convicted of statutory sexual assault, unlawful contact with a minor, indecent assault of a person less than 16 years of age, and 10 counts related to a child's sexual abuse material. The victim, a 13-year-old girl, reported that he, who was 26 at the time, attempted to have sex with her in a car. He later admitted to having sex with the girl in her house, and the young girl's mother found explicit text messages, pictures and videos of him that he had sent to her daughter. At the time, he was subsequently placed on administrative leave from the Pirates, and in 2022, he was convicted and sentenced only to 2 years of incarceration. ICE got a hold of him and went ahead and deported him to Venezuela. Let's see. Again, there was suspects, illegals that are doing a well-coordinated South Florida home burglaries. Immigrants using fake passports to pose as minors when crossing the U.S.-Mexican border. This was on December 31st. Bill Malusian with Fox News. Border agents in the Tucson, Arizona sector are seeing an influx of immigrants from Guinea using fake passports to claim they are minors when entering the United States illegally. The illegal immigrants are changing their ages and pretending to be unaccompanied minors so they'll have a better chance of getting into the U.S. The Border Patrol notice advises agents what to look out for and provides example of real and fake Guinean passports. It's crazy the links that these people will go through. A lot of this stuff I hadn't even heard of until she had started sending me these articles. So let me see what this says. Over the weekend, this was back in August, the U.S. Border Patrol arrested 7 hardened criminals trying to enter the U.S. 1 with homicide conviction, 1 with assault against person and hit and run, 1 is a registered sex offender, 1 is El Salvadorian gang member, another gang member, a Guatemalan with a warrant for his arrest, I don't know for what crime, and a weapons trafficker who came from Peru. So these were all the people that were arrested, and that was back in August of 23. Let's see what this one says. So this was back in May of 2023. A tip: several federal law enforcement officials monitoring the 2,500 migrants outside the Sacred Heart in El Paso told me some people living on the streets are confirmed members of Tren de Aragua, a gang that emerged from a Venezuelan prison in, it doesn't say when. Source, MS-13 has nothing on them. So I guess they're a pretty violent gang, but they are arriving in droves here in the United States, and that's been happening since May of 2023. Biden administration doesn't care that they're bringing in gang members, violent gang members at that. Operation Lone Star down in Texas reported that a smuggler was arrested after guiding 15 illegal immigrants across Rio Grande into Eagle Pass. That was back in July. And it shows some pictures of some fake passports and all that fun stuff that they come across. San Diego area residents say migrants are camping in yards, piling trash nightly. This is ridiculous. This was just on December 29th. This is coming to all of our neighborhoods sooner or later. People living outside San Diego near the U.S.-Mexican border say their properties are nightly overrun by migrants who chop down their trees for firewood and camp out on their land with impunity. And neither the federal nor the local authorities are doing anything to help. This one guy lives on a 78-acre property on the southern border, and that he said huge crowds of migrants troop across his land daily. In fact, the sight of dozens or hundreds of strangers has become so commonplace that his 3 dogs do not even bark at them anymore. Yeah. And, a lot of people have some concerns too with the diseases and that these people are bringing. They come from some countries that they don't have the medical care and the medical, infrastructure like we have here in the United States. Another couple who live about 5 miles east of that other guy's property, they've lived there for 40 years. Migrants coming from Mexico have been using their 17-acre property as a makeshift campsite and leaving behind tents, bits of clothing, and mounds of trash. He, who is an immigrant from the former Yugoslavia, said the newcomers had cut down all of his trees and dismantled his fence to use as firewood to keep warm at night. And his wife, who was born in Mexico, said she wants the government to stem the tide of illegal immigration. Pretty hard when these people, legal immigrants, see this happening and how they're just allowed to pour over the border and not have any consequences happen to them. So if you're coming from Senegal, pseudo-legitimate travel agencies are offering you a complete package for migrants crossing the U.S.-Mexican border. So if you're from Senegal, the travel agencies are run out of Senegal's capital city of Dakar, and tout visa-free travel to Europe and then to Mexico. And once in North America, customers are excuse me, connected to a smuggling organization that will help them cross the southern U.S. border illegally. They sell complete packages to connect them to a smuggling organization that will then facilitate their movement up to the border. The smuggling organization have built out a large bus line in the northwestern Mexican state of Sonora, sending dozens of buses a day to random spots along the U.S.-Mexican border to facilitate migration. Isn't this interesting? These smugglers are recklessly putting migrants in harm's way in remote locations across the border, onto the tops of trains, and into the waters of the Rio Grande. It's insane to think. And again, that travel agency is just as bad as the NGOs. It's something that has popped up to cash in on what is happening at the U.S. border. Yeah, migrants reject sandwiches, pancakes, donuts, and chicken dishes at New York City shelters. Several migrants confessed to the Post Friday that meals served up at the New York City asylum seeker shelters are so bad they often just trash them, with some opting to sneakily cook in their rooms instead. Thousands. Their claims of terrible food came a day after it was revealed that thousands of uneaten taxpayer-funded meals prepared for asylum seekers are tossed each day. No one likes the food, Jesus Alberto from Venezuela told the Post outside the Roosevelt Hotel, the Big Apple's main migrant intake center. Without lying, it's bad. It's really bad. Meals served to the migrants include pancakes, and a type of fried tortilla for breakfast, sandwiches for lunch, and dinners, including chicken Alfredo and chicken with spaghetti. The number of meals being wasted is down in part to asylum seekers ditching the city-funded food in favor of buying their own. Where do they get the money to buy their own? The Post spotted several migrant families hauling groceries into the Roosevelt this week, including strollers stacked with boxes of Cheerios and cornflakes, as well as bags filled with chips, bread, and pasta. There's a lot of food left over because people eat in their rooms. A lot of people get food on the street because it tastes better and there's better variety. Let's see. As for the rest of the meals, the food is very cold and they don't let us heat anything. You can't eat the food. However, she admitted to keeping a rice cooker in the Roosevelt shelter room she shared with her 2-year-old daughter, which they use to make meals. They don't let us cook, so the mothers have rice pots to cook with. We make rice and meat in the rice pot. So this one mom has been staying at the Roosevelt for 7 months, and she too said she won't feed her kids the meals that they provide. The breakfast and lunch is so cold we can't eat it, so it gets thrown in the trash. They serve sandwiches for lunch, but they are freezing cold. One company that serves meals to migrants across the city had to trash more than 70,000 wasted migrant meals between October 22nd and November 22nd. DocGo, who do not provide food for the Roosevelt, were awarded a $432 million no-bid contract by the city to help with the migrant services. No bid, folks, $432 million. Under the hefty $1 million contract, the COVID testing turned migrant shelter firm receives up to $33 per day from the city to provide 3 meals for each of the 4,000 asylum seekers it looks after, meaning the discarded food over that 20-day stretch would have set taxpayers back roughly $776,000. These illegals just keep costing us more and more and more money. Venezuelan migrants arrested in latest string of shoplifting from Chicago Macy's stores. This was December 3rd. 2 more Venezuelans staying in Chicago were arrested after allegedly stealing hundreds of dollars worth of merchandise. This has been going on and on and on. They think that they were probably guilty of other things too. They don't have the proof though. But of course, everything's going to be free in the United States. Then 2 Venezuelan migrants charged with robbing Oak Brook Macy's. That was on December 11th. So they robbed 2 different Macy's that day. Mind you, these are all Venezuelans that we're talking about. Venezuelan migrants charged with theft from Oprah. Oh, that was another article about the same thing. DuPage County officials warn of disturbing trend as 5 migrants face burglary charges. 5 Venezuelan migrants have been arrested and charged in 2 separate incidents within the last week. And they say that it's a part of a disturbing trend in the western suburbs. So, are these Venezuelans part of this gang, this dangerous gang? And they're just coordinating in ways that are going to make them profitable here in the United States once they've arrived here. Venezuelan migrants, Black Friday burglary, arrest arises. Concerns over presence of Venezuelan prison gang members among asylum seekers. This was on October 30th. The Chicago Contrarian has raised concerns about the potential presence of members of a Venezuelan prison gang, TDA, among asylum seekers. The gang is known for its involvement in various violent criminal activities. It's only a matter of time. Among our asylum seekers exist members of a Venezuelan prison gang. A characteristic of the game is extreme brutality. Imagine the depravity these sadists will inflict when placed in Johnsonvilles. Happy Halloween, y'all. The notice comes as a purported member of the gang has been arrested twice in Chicago since his arrival. And of course, they're using 2 different names, the 2 different times they're arrested. This is a mess, folks. A big mess. Venezuelan trio arrested in Eagle for alleged bank fraud and conspiracy. This was November 9th. This was in Eagle, Idaho. According to a Facebook post, 3 men from Venezuela living in Florida and Utah are being held in the Ada County Jail after officers arrested them trying to set up fake accounts at 2 different Eagle area banks on Tuesday. Investigators also found stolen credit cards, fake money orders, blank checks, and other evidence of bank fraud in their car. Oh, goodness sakes. Let's see. A Venezuelan gang bus in Mexico City raises alarm over criminal influx into the U.S. Again, it's from that, let's see. A Venezuelan's gang reign of crime is coming to an abrupt end as city police detained 2 of its key members following a fiery shootout that led to the death of a man. Let's see. Yeah, the detained individuals are believed to have journeyed from Caracas to Mexico City with the sole intention of engaging in criminal activity. So this TDA gang is worse than MS-13, something that we need to look into. And evidently they're coming in droves, and many, many numbers of them have already crossed our borders. Venezuelans, let's see. Venezuela's worst criminals and record number of migrants from India among those illegally crossing into the U.S. This was on October 30th again. And among the thousands of migrants that have illegally crossed the U.S. border are Venezuela's worst criminals and a record number of Indians who are seeking asylum in the States. Henchmen for Venezuela's dictator and many of the South American country's worst criminals have crossed over the U.S. border and are now causing chaos in major American cities, including Dallas, Miami, and Chicago. The outlet describes Villa Dallas, a Venezuelan neighborhood in Dallas, as a scene of mayhem. For months, once peaceful apartment complexes have been the scene of illegal street races, beatings, shootings, and extortion attempts. constant source of gun fire is heard. In the month of September, at least 334,914 Venezuelan citizens have crossed into the U.S. in fiscal year 2023. In the month of September alone, 72,352 were encountered at the U.S. international crossing, making citizens from the South American country the largest nationality arrested for illegally entering the U.S. So, there's sanctions that when Biden and I can't remember, Blinken were down there in Mexico talking to the president down there, trying to get Mexico to be a little more cooperative with stopping the flow to make them look better because, an election year is coming up. He was talking, the president there of Mexico was talking about lifting sanctions from Venezuela. But what American citizens don't know, this is what the military wife has sent me, is that the U.S. government they took the sanctions from Venezuela so that the U.S. government can deport from the U.S. to Venezuela the criminal illegal aliens. And I can tell you this started on October. Since October, they are deporting Venezuelans back home. And that didn't used to be the case under the Trump administration because a lot of those countries would not accept the illegal criminals that ICE was wanting to deport and send back to their countries. And President Trump had to have a conversation with them and say, we're going to stop all of your foreign aid if you don't step up and take these people back. And so most of those countries were like, okay, we'll take them back if it means we're still going to get our foreign aid. Let's see. The president of Mexico deported Friday and Saturday before the new year. But the planes were from Venezuela because the USA gives the permission to Mexico to use the Venezuelan planes to deport Venezuelans back home. Friday's plane had 207 and Saturday had 235. That's a drop in the bucket compared to the 70-something thousand that showed up in September of 2023, right? All right, I'm going to get into a few other police or a drunk driver kills passenger in a 100-mile-per-hour crash and flees to China. Sanctuary State, Illinois, a pair of illegal aliens charged with stealing $3,000 of Macy's merchandise. FBI Director, Jordanian national arrested in Houston, accused of studying how to build bombs. NYPD recovers pound of meth from the New York City hotel turned migrant center, the Roosevelt Hotel. A migrant allegedly molested girl at New York City hotel housing asylum seekers, the Roosevelt. Two migrants busted in separate weekend assaults at New York City's Roosevelt Hotel intake center. Man stabbed two taken into custody at Manhattan migrant shelter. New York City bomb squad combats migrant pickpockets. Migrant busted for allegedly slugging wife at New York City shelter. Migrant shelter residents arrested after a scuffle. Dad arrested at a New York City Roosevelt Hotel migrant shelter for child endangerment. Another illegal was arrested for slapping a migrant woman, arrested after slapping a New York Police Department cop trying to confiscate her unregistered motorbike outside the New York City shelter. I mean, the list just goes on and on and on. Newly arrived immigrant arrested 7 times. He was arrested 6 times for 14 crimes in the first 2 months in New York City. And then, of course, he's just released right back out onto the street, right? Because these people don't care. Anyway, I am stunned at the amount of crimes. I mean, I could have gone on for a whole nother hour reading these articles and letting you know about the crimes that are being committed by these illegals that are pouring over our border. And these are things you're never going to hear about, ever. Because these articles just are never spoken about. And I'm going to keep bringing this information to you so that you're aware of what's happening. But tomorrow's show, I'm going to have my granddaughter, my 23-year-old granddaughter, who is a strong Republican, conservative young lady, worked for Turning Point, and is finishing up her nursing master's in college. But I'm going to have her on just to kind of have a conversation to see about how the younger generation thinks about the state of affairs in our country, and how she's kind of an anomaly, a college student and actually a strong conservative. So we will have her on to join us tomorrow. Thank you for tuning in today, and I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful evening.